Responsible Tech Talks. This has been eagerly anticipated by me, at least. I've been very excited since you agreed to come on. So, welcome.
Thank you so much. I am so thrilled to be here. You've heard me gush about the concept of these talks before. I just think that it's amazing that you're taking the space to have these really important conversations about technology at a point that's so critical and pivotal. And I've never seen anything quite like this before in past like technological waves. It's been, everybody's kind of dumped into it and then reacted to it, but it's really interesting to be kind of in the process. So yeah, thank you so much for having these conversations. I think this is an incredible space. So thank you again.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear your take, and thank you for doing the work, because everyone who comes on here they're really thinking deeply about all of these topics, their accountabilities with this technology and this new space, but it's just so invisible most of the time. So I really am grateful to showcase hey, there are really people doing good work, and we're going to talk about that and what you've been up to. So before we get into a little bit of your history and your professional background, I'm just going to kind of share with the audience here how we came together. So I think that'll be a good jumping off point for our conversation. But it was October of last year, I believe, where we were speaking on a panel. You were moderating it and also participating. And that panel was called, it was a part of a conference called GenUX, held in Boston and co-sponsored by the AIGA Boston chapter and my former employer, as I recall. So yeah, and it feels like forever ago that happened. So much has changed. But the topic of that panel was AI for good. And I think right when we wrapped that panel, you, me, and James, the other person on the panel, were just thinking, oh my gosh, we have to do this again because there's so much more to unpack. So this is the kind of circling back and seeing how have perspectives changed? How's the environment changed? So here we are.
Yeah, it's also one of those things that it feels like it's forever ago, but it was also a moment ago.
Yeah, for sure.
And when you said that, I was trying to think what was the latest AI thing that had just happened? And honestly, I feel like Midjourney might have just updated. There was a model change that maybe their technology got better. So anyway, the things are just moving so fast in this space. There's a week goes by and the world turns upside down. Maybe DeepSeek happened 2 months after.
It was after. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, it's just
and that's huge.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Well, we will definitely delve into that and how things have changed, but I do want to give you the opportunity to share with the audience a bit about what it is that you are doing, why the topic of AI and design is very close to your work. And I always like for people to be able to see themselves in, my guess, learn about their career paths and know, hey, I can also be a voice in this, space. So it's helpful to hear a little bit about where you are, how you got to where you are.
Sure, absolutely. So a little bit about me. We've already been introduced, but my name is Catherine, and I'm based in Norton, Massachusetts, which is about halfway between Boston and Providence. And I have about 20 years of experience doing all kinds of design work in branding and print and digital. My early career, I started off being in-house with startups and started to do more work, especially on the freelance side with nonprofits, think like universities and municipal programming. And then right when the pandemic started, I made a pivot to be full-time freelance. So right now I am basically a full-time freelance principal designer, which means that I'm usually the only design resource that's available in an organization or on a project. Yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell, my day, kind of 9 to 5. I don't really work 9 to 5, but that's kind of my 9 to 5. And then outside of that, I'm really interested in design advocacy and arts advocacy. And that's what led me to AIGA Boston and the work that I do there, basically helping to support any kind of programming that would help a designer progress throughout their profession. And that's everything from coming in to being a designer through your career and then seeing what that looks like as you gain more experience and your portfolio evolves. So I've been doing work with AIGA Boston for the past 6 years on their board as the co-director and then director of diversity and inclusion. And yeah, I will soon be president of AIGA Boston.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. I'm just really honored. It really is incredible. Some of the other people that have been president before me, our chapter is about 40 years old, so we've got some good history behind us. And yeah, I'm clearly like this topic resonates with me all the time because I'm working with interdisciplinary teams. Not everybody has the same kind of exposure to AI that I do on the design side, right?
Mm.
And I'm sure we'll talk more about this, like the kinds of tools that are available to designers right now. But yeah, a lot of it for me is being able to educate clients of the pros and cons, and then of course like navigating it for my own business, right? So understanding like when I want to use it, when I want to disengage from it, especially in that like sales cycle. And I'm sure we'll talk more about like being a freelancer and owning your own business, and like what levels of transparency you provide to your customers and your clients when it comes to using AI, because it's like a pretty big deal, right? So that's a
Yeah.
little
Oh,
bit.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no. So you've seen it all, and you've seen quite an evolution in the design practice, the space, the tooling, as you said. So I think a great perspective on what's the same, what's changed. So
Yeah.
we will definitely dig into that. I do want to kind of pick out one of the notes that you shared around your passion for advocacy and design. And I'm wondering if you can articulate where that passion comes from. I think it ties into our responsibility theme, and just curious, to know what motivates you.
Yeah. So this might sound like a little bit like woo-woo for some people, but like I love my job. Like I love my job. I live my job. I completely believe in the power for design to change the world in the most positive ways possible. And when we aren't responsible stewards of design, we have already seen some negative consequences, and it can ultimately like lead to our destruction. And I mean that in like an all-encompassing way. I want more people to become designers. I want more people outside of our community to understand the power of what we do. So then they know who to collaborate with when they have problems. Everything from, your basic, like, I need a logo, which like most people can like connect the dots on that, all the way through to like, we can help with service design, right? We can help your employees feel better when they're at work. Like that's huge. Like that's an incredible power to have someone that can like take that kind of step back, do the research, have the empathy, and then actually put together a plan and follow that plan through, right? Follow the metrics and be able to make adjustments to those plans. So I would say like that is the thing that drove me to AIGA Boston and being a design advocate, is that I believe our career is something that's thriving and healthy. And I'd love to hear more about like you and what you're seeing. But I've heard like a lot of people who have a lot of experience saying like, oh, if I were born now, I wouldn't go into design. And like that breaks my heart. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's so much work to do. There's so much work to do. And then of course, like I see like the eager, like early, like emerging people coming in who want nothing but work. Want to like dive in, like full body into it. So it's just like really wild, because from my perspective, it's like there's tons of things to do. It's just a matter of being able to connect that and make sure that people understand like what we can do. So then we can be accessed more readily as that course.
So that kind of begs the question for me is, how do you define design? I love you brought up service design, for example. So if you can tell me a little bit more about how you view it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, my husband asked me to do this like virtual career day for students, and his students are like basically like K-12, but this was targeted towards like 6th, 7th graders. And I was trying to think of like the best way to describe design, because it is like really hard to describe. So loosely put, I think about design as storytelling, right? So what we do is we think about something, could be a concept, an idea, a person, something, and then we try to weave that into a story. And that story can show up in a lot of different ways. It can show up in a logo, it could show up in a poster, it could actually be literally a book, it could be a video. Like there's so many different ways that design can be applied. So that is my, like, if I had to explain it to a 5-year-old kind of version of it, is like design is a type of storytelling. Of course, we can like dive like into specific design verticals and talk more about like, what do typographers do and what do UI designers do? And, like there's all sorts of like nuances to those jobs. But I feel like describing it that way also helps people out of the mindset of designers like just make logos and just like wear turtlenecks and like which like a lot of us are true. Being able to make it more accessible, and basically like people do design all the time, right? And they might not themselves be a designer, but design happens all the time.
Yeah, well, I'll be interested to hear. So, what I like about kind of the direction of this conversation here is that you're pointing out that our professional ethos outside of like the AI tooling or responsible AI or what have you is
Mhm.
also kind of a driving force in how we think about the technologies, tools, just generally how we approach our work, and finding that where those marry up is sounds really important. So,
Yeah.
maybe that's a good segue into talking a little bit about your use of AI and that kind of evolution over time,
Yeah.
maybe in comparison to other tools and how you're leveraging it today. That's a huge question. So you could, yeah, start wherever makes sense.
So early on in my career, the thing that brought me into design was technology. And for some context setting, I had my first design class in the year 2000 and my first like professional project in 1999. So was like coming in right at the end of Quark, and like Macromedia was still in the
Yeah.
mix, and like websites looked and felt a very specific way.
Hmm.
So having that kind of like technological background, like I was all in on being able to like hand code websites. I loved using Flash. Like everything that was computer based was like my world. So flash forward maybe 4 years or so. Basically, I was having a really tough time. Like I graduated right when the .com bubble burst,
Hmm.
and I had a really tough time finding a job as a designer. So I did some supply management work for a couple years, but decided to go back to school because design was what I wanted to do. So when I went back to school, my graduate school application was actually all about how we could leverage technology to basically do like a type of surface pattern design that's based on like a certain like visual patterning system. And like, so I absolutely wanted to use technology to help like people who didn't have access to platforms like create like beautiful things in the physical world, right? Like
Hmm.
that's what I wanted
Hmm.
to do. So like all along, I love having machines help us make amazing experiences. Like I've always been rooted in that. So throughout, the early 2000s, like right when like website builders became like better and better, like always leaning on those resources. Like I was always somebody who was like interested in learning more about those systems and like really being able to adopt them into my practice and making sure that my clients knew what tools and resources were available to them. Like, the birth of Figma. I still use my
Hmm.
original Gmail account. Like there countless times I've advocated for Airtable. I've done like,
Hmm.
all of those things, like being a representative of how we can use these software systems to improve our output. So when AI came along, I was like starry-eyed about it. Because it's like, oh my gosh, like fine, I don't have to resize this one ad like 70 different ways.
Yes, I've heard that story from designers many
Yes.
times.
Oh, like
Oh,
what? Like
yeah.
this is gonna be like life-changing for me. Like
Yeah.
finally have like something to do like that kind of like production work. And I value production designers. Like great production
Hmm.
designers, by the way, are like magical people. And
Hmm.
like you need to make friends with one if you do not know one already. But like I personally did not want to have to do that kind of production work, especially in like the small context, like the smaller teams that I was working in.
Hmm.
So now it's really interesting because I see nothing but the like beautiful possibilities, but we haven't gotten there yet for like a lot of the day in day out things that like
Hmm.
I need AI to do. So there's this interesting like crashing together, and maybe you've seen the same thing. Like first, I've been around long enough to know like we need to design tools sustainably. So it really
Hmm.
terrifies me that we don't have better transparency around how much energy is being used by
Yeah.
these tools. Like
Hmm.
we absolutely have access to that data. It should be available for people who want to see it. We should just have it. And like from my understanding, and please if anybody's listening to this conversation like knows any better, I have yet to see a single company have like great transparency about sustainability. So
Hmm.
like we've got that problem coming in.
Hmm.
We have the exacerbation of the data transparency problem, which has been following us around since the rise of social media predates that. Like, frankly, that was just adding fuel to the fire. And now we're adding more fuel to the fire, right? Like, I need to know where the data sets are coming from, how long the data is going to be used, how my data is going to be used, because I deserve to know. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is something that I should have access to. And we haven't solved those like two like main problems. And then there's like the third layer of, and I know that you've seen this before where it's like the software promises to do this, but really it's like here.
Yeah.
So like,
Mm-hmm.
like what's going on? Like, and of course, like clearly it's improving all the time, but it's not delivering what it says it's delivering just yet.
That's right.
But like dealing with that frustration. So getting into like my day in, day out, I have tried using, and like these are specific, like big companies that I'm sure other people have had experience with too. I've tried using Adobe Firefly. It's like okay. If I ever use it in my work, I tell my clients that I'm using it. And so far they don't have a problem with it, but then I, warn them about like copyright issues and like some of the things that goes on if we use it directly in produced work. I've played around a little bit with Midjourney. I've used some of the Adobe integrated generative tools. They're like still kind of iffy, not great at like big scale. Like I print things sometimes like 30 feet wide, 40 feet tall, like big, and like it's not that great at generating images like that, at least for me, not yet. And then I use ChatGPT a bunch. And that's like, sometimes it's like an amazing machine, and then sometimes it's like, what? Like,
yeah, I'm curious specifics on that, because I'll just share with you, because you were interested in my research world. I'm doing a lot of market research. I'm using Gemini to do that. It is great at compiling data points from myriad different websites that I don't have to go in individually and suss out so it's saving me maybe like half of my time. But when I go back and read the summaries of the research output, it's drawing conclusions that sound good, but you look at the sources, it's like, oh yeah, because that's a PR article from these, different competitors. And of course they're going to say that their thing is important and the greatest new thing. So that basic information literacy, I just realized like that is still very important. And I still have to go back. It makes mistakes, and so the time saving is in the aggregation, but in the analysis it's not there. So that for me is a bit of that disconnect. But from a design perspective, I'm curious, where do you see it? Just like it's not quite where in my mind it should be.
It's like it's everywhere. I'll pick on one company in particular. There's a company called Relume. Relume's promise is basically AI generated websites and wireframes, right? So wireframing, critical to the design process. For people who don't know, wireframes are basically helping people identify the content that's going to go on a website without diving into what the front end of the UI would look like. So you're not talking about final colors and typefaces. You're talking about structure, like what information are we going to put on the about page? Sometimes hierarchically, like trying to figure out like the general flow of the story, but you're not diving into like, we are going to put this button over there. So Relume promises to help with that process of wireframing, and then be able to take those wireframes and then like transition them into living websites, right? And I've never successfully been able to do that with that particular tool. In all fairness, like I also have not spent like 80 hours with it. I think maybe if I spent like more times with the tool, it would work out better. But like that is a classic example of like most of the design tools that I'm coming across right now typically say things like, we'll help you wireframe faster. We'll help you come up with slides. Like, and I think almost everybody's probably seen either Microsoft's version. I think Google does a little bit of slide automation and being able to kick out like different compositions for slides and sometimes content. I think that those tools, to your point, it's like it can aggregate things together, but like it needs a lot of cleaning up before like
there's no story there to use your design analogy.
Yeah. And so like those are the sorts of tools that I'm looking at. And then I do a lot of copywriting and Grammarly. It's funny, I didn't even mention Grammarly. I've been using Grammarly a long time. I feel like Grammarly has some sort of AI that's been kind of working in the back end for quite a while. I've noticed lately that Grammarly has become much more aggressive. Like it's showing up more and more and more in my writing. And it's actually really frustrating. And I'm pushing, like, I don't know if you ever write like this. Like there are times that I do things on purpose and then people know that like a human wrote this. Like a lot of times in Slack, I'll write in all lowercase. So like, like a human, because machines won't do that right now. Like they just optimize towards like sentence case or
the right way. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. And I've noticed that Grammarly has like slowly started to crush my voice. Like there are certain things that I do that aren't necessarily grammatically correct, but it, like if you read it, you're like, oh, a human wrote this. Like a machine wouldn't write like this. And like Grammarly is like consistently trying to put in like articles and saying like, oh, you should put a period here. And it's like, no, like
Thanks, but no.
So, like, it's not just like the visual design stuff that I've been looking at, but
Hmm.
also like being able to do like more writing, especially now because like I'm doing more like advocacy work and like making grant applications and putting proposals together and all that kind of stuff. So that's like kind of the universe of tools that I use the most often. The one that I'm excited about trying out is more Midjourney because I have seen people do cool things with Midjourney. And I feel like there's like a couple of things with Figma that are going on right now. I don't do a ton of work in Figma at the moment, which is interesting. But it's one of those things that I just kind of want to freshen up my tool set
Hmm.
and get
Hmm.
back to that.
Hmm. Yeah, sounds like a little bit like yeah, there's the quality piece. It's not really synthesizing things in a way that's like intelligible for what you're trying to do,
Yeah,
essentially. Oh,
yeah,
interesting. So how does that, you mentioned the relationship then with your clients. So as an independent, person, who has accountability for these tools, the tool use, and as you're saying, there's a lot that's opaque about that.
yes.
And then if you are using them to stitch together things, so there's this quality piece that you have to evaluate. How do you negotiate with your clients then the tool use when you say that you make it transparent that I'm using them? What has that conversation been like to you, and how have the clients responded to that?
Yeah, so like kind of going through like the full life cycle of a project with me. If I use AI in a proposal, then I tell people.
Okay.
Like I just have a
Hmm.
statement in there that's like this, this proposal has been written with the consultation of AI tools, and I get pretty specific about like which tools I've been using. In my case, it's ChatGPT and Grammarly because it's important for me to set that kind of brand tone, right? So
Mm,
like part of my brand is being like genuine and authentic about these things. So like
mm,
putting the statement in the proposal. And so far nobody balks at it. I mean, I
mm.
think that some people it's like refreshing because like most people are like Shazam. Like proposal arrived and I'm a genius, right? Like there's usually not that kind of like I use tools to help me do my work. I'm not like shy about like about talking about that. Then on the kind of brainstorming side, yeah, like I've tried using both chat and Adobe Firefly to do some brainstorming of imagery. And it's interesting, like the best way that I can think about it right now in terms of doing that is like it provides a good mirror. Like I'll put
Mm,
something in, I'll look at it and I'll be like, oh, I don't really want a Lego figure of this professor to look like this. I want it to look like this. Like I want their hands to be like this, and I want them to be holding a microscope or whatever. Like it'll help
mm,
me, like
mhm.
generate ideas, but it usually doesn't help me come up with a final one. Anytime that I've proposed an AI generated image that's something like exclusive, like the featured image is AI generated, the clients have rejected it. So
Oh,
like
interesting.
just straight out of like either the content or the overall aesthetic, they do
Mm.
not like it so far.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but I'm not surprised to see that because a lot of I'm sure you've seen it. It's like the 3D generated like shapes that look kind of like puffy and bubbly and that kind
Mhm, yes.
of thing like
Mhm,
3 or 4 years ago.
mhm,
A lot of my clients weren't into that style either. So like
mhm,
yeah, this like very finished, polished like kind of style doesn't totally surprise me that they're like, no thanks, we want something that looks a little bit more natural, like
hmm,
leaning more on photorealism than like this kind of like 3D, like shiny glossy look. So there was one case where using AI generated images was crucial in the execution of the project. Like there were samples of AI generated pieces that went along with like physical, like real world um, graphics, and like that is probably the lone example of like something actually going in publication into mass publication that had AI
mm,
embedded in it. But again 100 like completely transparent with my clients about like when I use it and that a lot of that work can't be copyrighted and what I'm using. I will also
mm,
say as like because I know people might be interested in like owning a business.
mhm,
I have insurance. Most of the insurance that I carry is to help cover liability when it comes to building out websites. But I
mhm,
can easily see how there's going to be more and more insurance that's kind of related to AI and AI use and like data and security of data, right? Because if
mm.
I'm working with a client that has sensitive information and I accidentally put it into Grammarly, right?
Yeah.
I could see, how a client could be really upset about that, especially depending on the kind of space that they're in. So I am keeping an eye out more and more for insurance products that help to cover that kind of like accidental disclosure of data if something goes like upside down.
Yeah, and it's interesting about tooling. So Carolina, who, hello there, asked a follow-up question that I want to present to you, and then I also have another question. But she said, "How would your actions change if you knew the environmental impact of your AI use? So if that were transparent, how would that factor into how you execute your work?"
So that's a fascinating question. Number one, I would use it less. And to that point, I actually don't use Chat GPT like Google. I
Hmm.
actively decided not to do that because I don't know the energy use of like,
Hmm.
yeah, it's really important for me to know how many cats there are on the planet, but like I can use a Google search for that, assuming that a Google search is actually having less of a negative impact than, your traditional Chat GPT search. And then I think again, as like a business owner, being able to share with clients like, hey, this is the environmental impact, because some clients, especially out of
Hmm.
you, are very interested in the sustainability and your sustainability practices. I think that that's going to start coming up more and more in the United States. But being able to disclose to them, like in the execution of this project, like this was the overall environmental impact, and actually have metrics to go along with it. So if I did have access to that information, I would be able to share that with clients. And then, of course, I would be able to moderate my own use and like pick and choose where it's like, okay, I can use a more traditional tool for this, but like for this other thing, it's like there's no way I can get around. If I needed to make placeholder data for, I don't know, like some kind of like very complicated data visualization where I needed like tens of thousands of points of data, like that would take a very long time for a human to do. And
Hmm.
if it took a machine to do it, sub 5 minutes, then I think it might be
Yep.
worth it.
Yeah, I'll throw in one example that from a friend of mine who's senior leadership at a very old, prestigious law firm.
Mhm.
And she was sharing that their AI use policy says that they will not use it for image generation because compared to text generation, it is more energy intensive. Now, for a law firm, I don't know how, much of a sacrifice that is, but I thought it was the first example up until, a little bit about what you shared about how you would approach this that I've heard people willing to make that intentional choice and that trade-off.
Yeah.
So it is happening, but I think that calculus would be so much easier to do with the actual factual data about what's happening. And it could be a competitive advantage for some of these tool providers, I would think. But
Absolutely. And I know this is probably going to be a point of controversy, but like I think something like that should be legislated. Like there are so
uh-huh.
many things
I
about
don't,
energy use, right?
yeah,
Like
yes.
I yeah, I was just thinking about this, like, and this has been an ongoing frustration. Like I want to know in my house, like what outlet uses what amount of energy, like to the outlet, to the
Hmm.
like whatever product. And it's like we should have access to that information. There's no reason why we should. Like I know that we know
Yeah.
in aggregate because we all pay electric bills, but like that's something that we should have access to.
Yeah, to
Like,
make informed choices, like,
of
that
course,
does
yeah,
seem reasonable.
absolutely.
Well, the other thing related to tooling, and we'll move on from that, but it was just of interest to me because I've been seeing, and following a little bit the lawsuit between, like, Disney and Midjourney, and,
Mhm.
essentially, yeah, Disney's claims of copyright, and that Midjourney is basically turning around copyrighted imagery that hasn't been, like,
Yeah.
remixed in a sufficiently creative way, and so I wonder if that, puts, any kind of, I don't know, chilling effect on folks who might be using these for their business and reliant on tools like Midjourney. Their status is a little maybe questionable.
Yeah, it's always the big corporations where I'm like, where are they gonna finally raise their hand or like slap something back? And like Disney's always an interesting one to watch because they have been so dogmatic, even pre AI, about
Hmm.
protecting their intellectual property. And yeah, it's just, and I'm sure you've seen this in the creative industry. It's always been hard for like the smaller fish to protect themselves because you have to hire a lawyer, people need to do research, and they need to be on retainer, and like we can't afford to do that. Like that's
Yeah.
it's really, really tough. But then to like see like the bigger companies hopefully make those pushes, and then maybe legislation will catch up with it. I don't know. It'll be really
Hmm.
interesting to watch.
Yeah. For sure, for sure. So we've talked around it a bit, but I always ask every guest directly, what
Mhm.
is your definition of responsible AI?
Sure. So at first I thought about it as being more about equanimity and balance, right?
Hmm.
Like how AI can help us achieve a better balance of like lots of things.
Hmm.
But then I'm like now starting to curve my thinking around to how AI and technology can help us have positive outcomes in regards to these like three major conflicts. One being the human to human, the other one being the human to environment, and then the other one being within ourselves, right? So,
Oh.
like, how can we cultivate more positive outcomes in those three scenarios? To me, is like where responsible tech is. It feels like it's going, and it's leaning really on that, like improving life,
Mm.
and making things better, improving those kinds of results when those kinds of conflicts happen. And to build on that, and I'm going to keep ruminating like after our conversation today to see like how else it could evolve. But it's something about stewardship, right? Like,
Mm.
who is the steward? Who helps us maintain that kind of responsibility? Because like that part of the conversation is like really interesting to me, right? Like,
Mm.
what responsibility does the maker of these tools have to the outputs of these tools, right? Like,
Mhm.
kind of start to get into in the real world, right? If a manufacturer making cereal has like glass fall into the product, there is some liability from the cereal manufacturer to like fix the problem, right? I assume like that's
Mhm.
not the
Mhm.
case anymore, but like I assume that there's like some sort of responsibility.
Let's hope. Let's hope.
Yeah, exactly. But like seeing something similar in software, especially as software becomes more autonomous, yeah, it's like I'm thinking a lot about like Waymo right now and like what
Hmm.
does responsible
Yeah.
AI look like in Waymo? Um, and yeah, Waymo's a tough one for me. I don't know. Like, so what are your thoughts about autonomous vehicles? Are you like somebody who's like ready to hop in one or just like,
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned this. I was just talking about because my son is 14. I feel like
Mhm.
he's going on 16. So there's like being able to drive is imminent. And
Yeah.
I've always dreaded it because their cars are just dangerous. And for years, I've said, I wish I never had to drive again. I could just hop in and it would just like do the things. And there seems like there's no reason that shouldn't work. So, like conceptually, I am very on board. Sign me up. I would love to do it. And
Mhm.
for me, I think the threshold would be making it safer measurably than it is today because it's always going to be a risk. We have accepted, I think, as a societal norm that we're going to take this risk on.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to do that. And if it's even a little bit better, that to me is an improvement. Now, in terms of where the liability lies, I don't know exactly, but if I'm
Mhm.
thinking about, to your point, like the social media, like you hear, like, who is it, the platform? Is it the people making the content? Who really owns it? There just has to be enough skin in the game to create the right incentives to have a balanced view. So I don't know that it's entirely A or B, but there's nuance in there that some legislative bodies really need to, I think, kind of figure out. So that's my long answer, but that's where I think I am today on that topic.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing.
Uh, let's see. So back in October, and this is reaching for me. Like I say, it feels like forever. We did talk about AI for good,
Yep.
and I was curious about your evolution in that perspective. But I think what I'm hearing from you is you've really kind of landed maybe more specifically on these three areas: person to person, person and environment, and within oneself as the ways in which AI can be operationalized to
Yep.
measurably improve things for people. Does that feel like an evolution to you, a kind of a continuity in your thinking, or yeah, how would you compare then and now in terms of your perspective?
Yeah. So, looking at that particular panel, it was fascinating that like I was moderating that panel because that's not usually the side of the fence that I'm advocating for,
Hmm.
right? I'm
Hmm.
usually much more of the like, what's wrong with this thing? How can we make it better? Like, I'm not usually like, oh, let's talk about all the positive outcomes. And since we had that conversation and like even prepping for that talk and hearing from you and James, like really about like the fascinating work that you're doing to help integrate AI systems into, client work, research, outputs, like, and being able to advocate for the machines in a way. So then, like, it's not gatekeeping, but it's more of like guiding people and being able to advocate for what the tools are, right, and how they can
Mhm.
be used to help improve their businesses. Uh, so that kind of like AI for good, and then also some of the things I was seeing from like pop culture and I mentioned this during GenUX, it's like storytelling and gaming, right? Like the things that are going to happen because of AI, it's just going to completely change how people approach gaming
Hmm.
and storytelling, and education. And like that's something that like at that time I was like, oh yeah, like this is great. This is really exciting. So following that arc along, it I don't know if this has happened to you, but it's like I get AI articles recommended to me all the time, like
Yeah.
everywhere.
Oh,
It's
yeah. Yeah.
like, yes,
It's clear what our interests are. Some algorithm has figured us out, I think.
yes. And it's almost to the point where it's like, stop. Like I
Can't
get
keep
it.
up.
Yes. There's enough, like I get it. So in that time I've obviously been keeping an eye on like some of the latest models that have come out, like what are the new technologies. We did have that big change in Midjourney where suddenly like the type tools allegedly got much better. Sorry to anybody who has a conflicting opinion. Like I haven't seen that in
Mm,
my work yet where I'm like, oh man, look at this. Like
mm,
this typography is like spot on. Like for anything that's like usable to me, like I just haven't seen it yet.
mm.
Um, Flashing forward to now where I've actually started to dig pretty hard into like two kind of opposing positions. One is like I'm going more into like analog work. So like physically drawing, physically painting, and like
Oh.
making things with my hands. And then on the other hand, I'm getting more into like PHP and programming again with the support of AI as like a tutoring tool, which
Wow.
is like it is helpful, right? Like it absolutely can help me build like widgets and applications I couldn't have built before and help me to understand like, okay, this is why these lines of code are like this. It still doesn't help with that layer of learning where it's like why approach it like this versus approaching it like that, like really being able to understand like the difference in decision making, but it is offering a solution where I can like kind of look at it and kind of try to understand the pattern. So I would say I still believe that AI can do good. I am glad that it is doing good for a lot of people. I'm really happy that like there are people who are finding careers in this space. Like that's huge. Also really frustrated at the same time with the industry overall, and that like the issues that I talked about before, right? Lack of sustainability or sustainable practices that are easily measured, and lack of data transparency, because it's been long enough. Like we should have access to those two things, and like
Mhm.
you're asking me to pay for a tool that you're not going to tell me these two interesting data points that are very crucial to
Yeah.
my profession and mental well-being. Like okay. um,
Mhm.
so I would say that's probably how things have changed for me since we spoke in October. And what the wild part is like between now and the upcoming GenUX in October, there's going to be some massive land shift again.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Almost positive that'll
yes,
be the case. Yeah.
yes.
Uh,
But what about you? Like, have you like
mm,
what things are you seeing, and what things have you seen in the past, 6 to 9
yeah.
months?
I'm going to have to think a little bit more in light of your comments because I thought it was so fascinating. You're talking about you're doing more maybe on the polar ends
Yeah,
of your work, the analog and the coding
yeah.
part. That there is an analogy into how I've been exploring it as well. So I think I have a greater appreciation for understanding the fundamentals. So I gave you the research example where it's like,
Mhm.
oh, this is like basic information literacy. People need to do this. If we have like a whole generation of folks who are just putting in prompts and like, here's an output, like that really worries me considerably. So this back to basics, like mentality has definitely been a part of my mind shift. But at the same time, I'm freaking doing stuff in the terminal, which I have no business maybe doing, but I'm learning to code agents and things like that, specifically because maybe like you, I gravitate more to the risk side of things, but not in a like, oh, we should never do this, but in a like, I need to understand to just in terms of transparency, how this works, what's happening when I make this decision X, what's Y output. So then I can understand how can I be a force for responsibility and making good decisions and advising people properly. So that's not exactly like a big mind shift, but you're just helping me put a finer point on maybe some of my behaviors that have changed
Yeah.
since October. The other realization that I have had, and I don't know that I felt it so strongly then as I do now, is that the opportunity for AI to be this translational tool is huge for me. I put things into Claude is my preferred,
Right.
chatbot. We all have one, right? But I
Yeah.
do try to, I might hear developers talk about some topic and I'm like, why are they concerned about this? So I'll relate a little bit of the conversation and say, tell me in plain terms, like why this is a thing. And it will. And I'm like, oh, okay. So now I just feel like I can talk to people and systems code
Mhm.
more directly than I could before and feel more confident and kind of self-serve in that way. So to
Yep.
me, it's like empowering me and other people to do things I couldn't have maybe done before. So
Yeah.
that's where the good piece, I think
Yep.
has shifted a little for me.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And when you were talking, um, it actually made me think about a video that I watched recently about AI in the classroom. And
Mm,
the idea of like a couple of schools have already started leaning in the states have started leaning pretty heavily on AI for education in K-12. And I am really interested to hear your thoughts about using AI around kids. Like, are you somebody who is like, yeah, we should do it, go all in, pull back, they have too much technology. Like,
mm.
what are your thoughts on that topic?
I'll be brief, but I'm not a model to follow my kids around screens a lot more than they should be. Some of that's just by necessity, like they're home today and I'm working, kind of a thing. But in general, like this summer, I want to do some AI project that they can execute on their own because I want them to feel that sense of empowerment and basic literacy in the same way, when they're doing internet searches or, they want to download an app. Like we talk about, like, let me check the privacy. Let's look through the terms. Like there is an education that's happening kind of indirectly through exposure, and I do think that that's a good thing. My son's very much into tech, and I'm like, well, if you're going to pursue this is the new world.
Yeah,
You need to find yourself in it.
yeah.
That said, yeah, there's danger in that too. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So, like, it's funny. I feel like in so many ways, like parents get shut out of like a lot of important conversations. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's one
Mm.
of those things where suddenly we like push tools out to kids and like nobody's like really thought about like what is actually going on here and how can we be more responsible in like having kids get exposed to these tools. I'm in like a slightly different position because I don't spend any time around children. Um, but it is something that's like to your point, like yes, they need to know that these tools exist. Like kids can use calculators, right? Like so like we've had this problem before. This is like a very different version of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have had these issues of when you go analog, when you go technological. And the thing that actually comes up a lot with kids in particular, other than like the data privacy issues and like some of the things again around basically their exposure to the world and like how much content they get exposed to is thinking through like how are we going to educate people with analog and digital at the same time when the digital tools are growing so fast and are so attractive. And it's like absolutely relating back to my work right now, because I was actually talking with a friend about this a couple weeks ago. I think a lot of people gravitate towards ChatGPT because they need something to give them a solution and one solution. We've become
Yes.
so overwhelmed by
Yes.
like options and
Hmm.
like ads and like constantly having like stuff being given to us that like it's like, oh my God, like this is refreshing. I just have one search bar. It's going to give me one answer, hallucination or not. It's going to give me one answer and that's it. I'm done. Like I don't have to like look at 47 different things and do all the stuff. But it's, and you absolutely hit on this. Like part of the magic of what we do is like we do a special type of data aggregation that a machine can't do. And we do that because we have the patience to read a book or read an
Hmm.
article or look through an entire video and use our past lived experience to make a story and make a solution based off of that. And a machine can't do that right now. Or maybe it can, it's just going to do it in like a very different way. And like, why in some cases? It's like, why would you trust that kind of output? So, like, how are we going to make sure that kids that are coming up have the patience to go out and have those lived experiences so then they can come in informed and like not just like rely on the taste that the
Yeah.
AI can give you.
Oh gosh, that's an interesting perspective. Just thinking about how one of the complaints or limitations of AI is that it doesn't have context. What happens when people lose their context of
Yeah.
like the real grounded truth, and then yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of a vicious cycle that doesn't seem positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the, I've heard people opine, and that maybe this will be a reality and a benefit of AI. Also, kind of weird to say that maybe AI will help guard us against some of those, the overwhelm that we see with, the articles that you're finding on AI all the time or whatever, but really help us manage that digital health.
Yeah.
Because I do think a lot of people just anecdotally are suffering from too much of all the things, but technology is really like feeding into that. And so
Yeah.
the attractiveness of like one answer, which that is so detrimental for creativity, for design, for research, whatever, just to believe that there's an answer to a big ambiguous question. There's always nuance. And
Yeah.
that's where like, I don't know, the good stuff is, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, with our time left, which is going by super fast, I should have known that it would. See, we need to do it yet again,
I know.
Catherine, and just no end to our conversations.
Yes.
But I wanted to kind of pull this up. We talked about your experiences,
Mhm.
and I want to kind of uh, extrapolate that into kind of your work with the AIGA in the design community, because I
Yep.
know that the community itself has been having lots of these conversations. You're working toward maybe some statements around AI use, or just in general the relationship with AI and design. So I wonder if you could share a little bit of that insight as well. What's going on in the broader community?
Sure. So, a couple of different threads that are going on with AIGA, the national organization, and then AIGA Boston. So, I actually just found out, and hopefully this week I can talk about publicly, but I just found out that AIGA National is working on its statement about AI and AI use. And it's important for organizations to have a position because those positions can often help to influence policy. I don't know what the relationship right now is between AIGA at the national chapter and like any kind of person that could actually write legislation, but it can be useful if somebody's doing research to try to formulate something to know like what professional designers have to say about the use of these tools and the creation of these tools. So AIGA Boston, on the flip side, I was chatting with Amy, the VP of programming, like two
Hi,
months.
Amy, if you're watching, she may be here.
And yeah, she mentioned this idea. She was like, yeah, we should have a statement, like AIGA Boston should have a statement about AI. And I was like, yeah, we should have a statement about AI. Our population's really unique in that we have a lot of educators here.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of people that are involved in like health sciences and finance and like those kinds of service sectors. So I'm very curious to hear what they have to say, especially about this intersection of like design and AI. So yeah, we are going to work on a statement from AIGA Boston. There's a statement coming in, hopefully from National, that's going to be coming out soon. So it'll be really interesting to see how those two pieces compare and contrast. And then I had the good fortune of being able to attend this past spring a workshop that was hosted by AIGA Boston, specifically Chris Rader. That was all about AI tools and education, and that was at Tufts University on campus with the Gordon Institute. And it like really amazing conversation to like go out physically, like be in workshop space to hear the overwhelming enthusiasm that people have for these tools. Like professors in particular love these tools and like love the capacity for positive outcomes with them. And then thinking through like how they are approaching like the student challenges, and how they can help to make sure that students are educated in how to use it without running into problems of like plagiarism, is like a hot topic right now. So like actively we're doing hopefully more workshops that are around the intersection of like AI and a particular segment of people or AI and a particular problem, because it is so like there's so many unknowns, right? We literally don't know yet because we don't have the conversations, and like organizations like AIGA Boston are well positioned to hold space for that, because we're not a company that's like constantly trying to push product out.
Yeah.
We are really about like advocating for the profession and like figuring out ways of making sure that people stay educated in it. So AIGA Boston in particular, I think, is going to have a really interesting upcoming year in terms of learning more about how AI tools can help produce positive outcomes be involved more on the advocacy side. And we'll see where the conversations go, because again, like, and I mean, I think this is for all of us, like, there are a lot of changes that are happening this year, like a lot of changes. And in New England in particular, like, we are facing some very interesting challenges. And I hope that those challenges don't push down the conversation about AI, because like that, I think, is when things can get off the rail. I'm hoping that we can continue to like push having those
Mm.
conversations publicly, and that people will be still interested in them even while all these other things are going on.
Yeah, I actually think that could be another good outcome of AI is just, I know that sounds funny, but the kind of the uncertainty it's created. I know for myself, I have gravitated to more in-person groups,
Yeah,
communities, conversations with people. So that's great. You're holding those forums. I agree. They're critical.
yeah.
Um, I also wonder, we're going to circle back, I think, to the beginning of our talk, which you talked about, new designers getting into the field who are chomping at the bit for work and so forth. What do you advise people who are attracted to the design field but might feel like, oh, well, AI kind of ruined it for all of us. So, yeah, what do new aspiring designers need to know or think about?
So, it's funny. So far, I haven't had an instance where an emerging designer has asked that specific question, because there's
Hmm.
this like really interesting combination of things that happen, I think, for people that are coming into design for the first time. They they really want to make things. A lot of them still want to make things with their hands. Like, they like mocking up physical products, and they like making photography, and they like doing illustration. They like hand rendering type. Like, there's something about like doing things with your hands that is still very attractive to a lot of the emerging designers. So I am going to keep an eye out for that particular question of like people having questions about, how AI relates to their careers, and like, when can I use it? When can I not use it? Because nobody has obliquely said it yet,
Hmm.
but like clearly people are using it. Like, when you mentioned Gemini,
Hmm.
it's everywhere. I mean,
Oh
like, it's
yeah, whether you want to use it or not, you're using
yeah,
it,
like,
huh?
exactly. And like, something we were talking about like kids before, like something that kind of like terrifies me is that a lot of people don't understand like how the internet works, and
Hmm.
like they still don't understand how the internet works.
That's
Like,
right.
don't get like, oh, like this Gemini is presenting an aggregated version of information to you. It is not like an all-seeing, all-knowing eye. It's just like pulling things together and like trying its best to make a good recommendation.
Hmm.
Um, quick quick tangent.
Yeah.
I I was doing some project where like I needed to set up a printer. Like, I wanted to like set up a third printer in my office, or like some weird thing. And at the time, I asked Google like something about like how to set up the printer, and the response back referred to me setting up the printer in the bathroom. And I was like,
Hmm.
why? Where is it getting this from? Like, literally, like, why is it getting
That's
this information?
bizarre.
Yeah, it was really, really weird. And it was one of those things that's like, I know it's saying that, and this is complete nonsense, but like, how many other people are looking at this and being like, oh, like, like, this is like what I'm supposed to do. Anyway,
Yeah.
so it's just being able for like those emerging designers to like, you can ask questions about the things that are being presented to you, and like, maybe to your earlier question about the role of AIGA Boston, like, there is absolutely an opportunity for us to have content and experiences that are targeting more emerging designers, and for them to understand what the AI is that they're interacting with, so then they can make smart choices. Like, I'm not here to try to tell you what to do, but I think that it's important for me to like tell you what the options are, like,
Mhm, mhm.
make smarter
And
decisions.
yeah, since, I do user research and have learned a lot about like
Mhm.
user people behavior. I mean, one of the things we know is that people are labor saving creatures. Like
Yeah,
if it's easy and quick, like there's such a pull to use that output at face value.
yeah,
And it's not that people are dumb or not critical. It's just how human nature is. So
yeah,
knowing that and then designing tools that sort of perpetuate that and perhaps not the best way, that
right,
really does concern me. Now they can be used, I think, to help you think more deeply, but that takes a lot more proactivity and time than I think, a lot of people have tolerance for in a
yeah,
lot of cases. So back to basics
yeah,
sounds very important. Fundamentals matter.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, well, we're kind of nearing the end of the time here. So I'm going to encourage anyone who's listening and has questions, please go ahead and put those in the comments. But Carolina did like a volunteer a comment. So I'm going to read that. In AI tools like Claude Code, you can actually see your token usage and costs associated with it. It
Great.
makes me wonder, kind of like using a smart energy monitor, if we could be making different design choices to reduce unnecessary token usage, think more critically about which models we're using, or even recognize when a human would be more efficient than another prompt.
Love it.
I do too. I was like, that sounds like responsible use to me.
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Any other questions from the audience? We'll wait while those come in. But while we conclude here, where can people kind of find you, connect with you if they have questions beyond today, or they're interested in what AIGA is up to? Yeah, what should they do?
Of course. So, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. I believe I'm the only Catherine Headen on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Good for you. Good
No,
branding there.
exactly. A few years ago, I was the only living Catherine Headen. I think there's two of us now. So, like, odds
Competition.
are, yes. If you find me on LinkedIn, I'm the one. And yeah, you can also find me at, of course, AIGA Boston, and that's Catherine at boston.aiga.org. And of course, like I am technically running around on the internet like most other people, but like those are probably the two best places like start a conversation. And yeah, I would love to talk with anybody about number one, like their general concerns about it, because I am now in a position where we can create programming and experiences to help reduce anxiety or increase education or anything about the topics around AI, or like just being able to have more time with people in person, right? And start to value those relationships in a different way because there's more than enough space for that as well.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for all of your deep thought too. I was like, you should be writing a book. Your three different perspectives. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a meaty and very thoughtful take. So the
Yes.
fact that you're in this space, you're facilitating these conversations, making them happen. Thank you so much for your work in responsibility.
Thank you. No, Jill, again, I love this programming. I am
Oh, yay.
so excited that you're having these conversations, and I will do everything in my power to shout from the rooftops
Mhm.
about the incredible work that you're doing because like these conversations are so important to have, and I just love the idea that like you're like doing the work, right?
Try and well, thank you. That means a lot to me, sincerely. Thank you so much. We're going to wrap it here, but I know we'll be in touch. And
Yes,
please, yeah, hopefully others will reach out as well. So take
absolutely.
care, everyone. Happy Friday.
Thank you.
Responsible Tech Talk.